just in 3 weeks, I was able to see so many different specialties and accumulate 80 hours total of shadowing experience
Yeah.
in specialties that I never even thought I would be able to shadow in or I would ever be interested in. It was amazing.
What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today on my YouTube channel. If you're new to the Medical School HQ YouTube channel, please subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can get more great videos. Today we have an awesome guest. We have Marichelle, who is a brand ambassador for Atlantis. Now, this is a sponsored episode from Atlantis. It's an organization that I've actually had on the Premed Years podcast previously on episode 318. And if you don't know Atlantis, they are a shadow abroad organization, and you go on these fellowships in many different countries, mostly in Europe, where you can spend 2 or 3 weeks in a different healthcare system in these hospitals in these countries where they have shadowing set up and these whole programs set up to really immerse you into the healthcare system, get you shadowing different specialties, and really get you out of maybe your comfort shell to get you some exposure and some shadowing. Now, it is typically a substantial investment, and we talk with Marichelle about how she has seen students afford and raise money to go on these shadow abroad trips. It's an amazing opportunity, and it's something, if you can make it work for you, I highly recommend looking into it. Now, I do mention with the recording with Marichelle that there's one medical school that I know of that doesn't like shadowing abroad. And I want to be completely transparent, and it's University of Utah, the last time I checked. And it may change as we're recording this or after we record this, but University of Utah specifically says, we only want US shadowing counted on your application. So just so you know. Shadowing is an instrumental part of an application because you need to understand what being a physician is, what that daily life of a doctor is. And as I talk about with Marichelle, finding shadowing is hard here in the States. It's something that I've been trying to work on to increase exposure for students. It's something that is just really hard for students to find. And as Marichelle was going through the process, she struggled to find shadowing, and Atlantis really helped her find the shadowing to impact her application and ultimately get her in to medical school. So without further ado, we're gonna jump in, say hello to Marichelle. If you are interested in learning more about Atlantis, go to joinatlantis.com. Marichelle, welcome to my YouTube channel and a fun little interview series sponsored by Atlantis today. I'm interested to talk to you about kind of your journey to medicine and your journey with Atlantis as well. So thank you for being here. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a physician?
Well, my interest in biology began when I was in high school. I was amazed at how tiny cells were able to contribute to the overall functioning of the human body. So then when I graduated high school, I moved to the US with my family. We immigrated, and I decided to major in biology in college. And I started volunteering for hospitals after I heard about opportunities from my fellow students. Mm-hmm. I started volunteering at 2 hospitals, and through volunteering, I witnessed the patient-provider interactions firsthand and learned about, the value of compassion in providers who care for patients, especially in their most vulnerable moments. Mm-hmm. And during this time, I was also volunteering for New York Cares, which is a nonprofit volunteer organization in New York City. I was leading a computer tutorials project. So I was working with a lot of immigrants. I was teaching them computer skills. And through that volunteer experience, I realized my passion for sharing knowledge. So I decided to pursue medicine because it provides continual opportunities to share knowledge and also for learning and serving diverse patient populations. I realized that becoming a doctor will allow me to pursue my strong interest in the sciences and eagerness to promote health and prevent disease.
Nice. And tell me, from a family background, do you have parents or family members who are in medicine, or are you going at this kind of first in line in your family?
I am actually the first one in my family to pursue medicine. So that has made it a little bit challenging for me because I had to sort out for resources, outside of family and friends. And being the first family here in the US, we didn't really know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the reason why I decided to look into Atlantis for shadowing opportunities, because I found that a lot of my friends were able to find shadowing opportunities because they knew people in working in hospitals. But this wasn't the case for me when I
Mm-hmm.
was pre-med. Um, and and so I looked things up online. I made a list of doctors in the area and tried to reach out, but I didn't really hear back. I was volunteering at two hospitals at a time, and I really like being able to, provide patients some comfort by engaging them in conversations, bring them pillows and blankets, and delivering food and water. But there wasn't really much, that many opportunities for me to learn from medical staff directly, and
Mm.
that's why I decided look into Atlantis, since shadowing opportunities can be difficult to find here in the US.
Yeah.
And through Atlantis, students are provided with a structured shadowing schedule. So every week you get a lot of shadowing hours in, and you get to shadow in different specialties. During the 3 weeks that I was in the fellowship, I was impressed. I was able to shadow a total of 80 hours. And my shadowing experiences helped me emerge with a better understanding of my place in the medical field and further deepened my passion to pursue medicine.
Yeah.
And shadowing through Atlantis immersed me in the medical setting, and provided me with a perspective of the medical field different from what I had gained from volunteering and scribing. Because through shadowing, I was able to witness firsthand, what it's like to be in the medical field and actually see the big picture.
So when you are in the hospitals, right? You're in the hospitals. You're volunteering, so you get that access. What was it like to try to ask physicians in the states in where you're volunteering and reaching out? Because obviously we can talk about Atlantis, and I want to talk about them and the amazing opportunity that they gave you and the experience that you had. But a lot of students can't afford Atlantis, and they'll look in at Atlantis and go, "Wow, like that's great, that's awesome. I'm glad you could go, but I can't afford that." And we can talk about some other fellows that who found ways to afford it. But for you trying to get shadowing experiences here, what was that like for you? How did you go about it? What was the rejection like? What was that like?
Okay. So when I was volunteering in the hospitals, it was really hard to approach physicians and ask them about opportunities to shadow them potentially, because they're so busy trying to take care of their patients, which I understand. Their patients are their priorities. And so it was, I mostly received a response of, well, I'm not sure if I have time for that.
Yeah.
And so it was really discouraging for me.
Were you
Um,
emailing? Were you doing phone calls? How were you how were you contacting these physicians?
so at first, I tried emailing
Mm-hmm.
doctors in the areas. I looked up some doctor email addresses I could find. For the most part, I couldn't really get like personal contact information, of
Yeah.
course.
Show up
So
at their house,
for the
big,
most
hello, Dr. Smith. Can I shadow you?
so it was mostly by email, I would
Okay.
say.
Okay. And
I tried a few times.
were you writing like specific personalized emails, or was it a pretty generic email?
I tried. I didn't really. I would say I probably reached out to 6 physicians. So I
Okay.
tried to make it personalized, but
Great.
I didn't really get to know a lot of doctors on a personal level when I was
Yeah.
volunteering at the hospital, since they were busy taking care of their patients.
Yeah.
So it was a bit hard to, I would say, I guess for the most part, it was pretty generic, but I tried to make it personalized so
Yeah.
that they remember who I was and
Yeah.
not
Well,
just a
let
random
me ask you a
person.
question. Let me ask you a question. So, from like physicians are busy, right? We understand that you're volunteering. Do you think, whether from your volunteer position or if it's a cultural thing, like you didn't want to interrupt the physicians because you knew they were busy, or were you told, like, I'm a volunteer, like you're not allowed to talk to the physicians or interact with them, bother them? What was that like for you?
Yes. So when I was volunteering, I could see that, they were really busy going to see a patient and going back to the computer and typing up their charts. So I personally saw that as, like they might be too busy for me to try to interact with them. Um, and I was volunteering in the emergency department too. So there was a lot of things going on.
Mm,
And I didn't want to, you know, be in their way.
yeah. So that was more of your personal, like, I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to be in their way, so I'm not going to ask. Okay, so it's a good thing to discuss because it's a very personality driven thing, right? Of like, it's okay. I'm going to go interrupt. I'm going to go just say, hey, this is who I am, and I want to shadow you, and that's okay to do too. But for you, you just weren't comfortable with it, or you were busy yourself, right? As you said. When you started searching for other shadowing opportunities, what was it about Atlantis that you were like, oh, this is kind of cool? Like, maybe I should look at this.
Well, as I mentioned before, it was really hard for me to find a shadowing experience myself
Yeah.
because just did not know anyone. And through Atlantis, I saw that they already have established connections with the hospitals.
Yep.
And so it was really easy for them to match you up with doctors you can actually shadow.
Yep.
And I like that there is a structure, a schedule. I can make the most out of the fellowship.
Yep.
I like that I was just in 3 weeks, I was able to see so many different specialties and accumulate 80 hours total of shadowing experience
Yeah.
in specialties that I never even thought I would be able to shadow in or I would ever be interested in. It was
Yeah.
it was amazing.
So we haven't really specifically said, but Atlantis is shadowing abroad, right? So Atlantis, when we go to their website, they have a lot of different opportunities in different countries. For you, how did you figure out which country that you wanted to go to?
Well, for me, I know I know French, so I was initially looking into maybe shadowing in France, which wasn't available. But I also know a little bit of Portuguese, and I love learning new languages, and so I thought, I want to go to Portugal because I want to also expose myself to the language and the culture that I'm so interested in learning more about. And I chose I chose Coimbra, Portugal specifically. Coimbra because it's different. I have options for Lisbon, Portugal as well. But I've grown in the city pretty much all of my life. When I was in the Philippines, I was born and raised in the capital of the Philippines, so it was
Hmm.
a city, and then I moved to New York City with my family
Yeah.
here, another city, and so I
Not a
wanted to
lot of culture
explore.
shock.
Yes. I wanted to explore, what it's like to be in a small town, bring myself out of my comfort zone.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the reason why I chose Coimbra, a small town in Portugal.
Yeah. So not a lot of culture shock going from big city to big city. What was the culture shock for you for the few weeks that you were in Portugal in that small town?
Well, there are no trains. I had to rely on buses. It was that was difficult.
Yeah.
Um, Another culture shock that I would say is, it's difficult to there's not a lot of good reception wherever you can go, and I feel like personally I am I use my phone a lot to communicate with my family and friends, and that's something I couldn't really do in Coimbra because of it's just not readily available. Their stable Wi-Fi is just not readily available.
Hmm.
um but I but I think that's pretty much it. I really liked that I threw myself in there. There wasn't so in the hospitals I shadowed in, doctors spoke really great English, but
Yeah.
the actual neighborhoods, like people who actually live there, there wasn't really a lot of people who spoke English, and so that really forced me to try to communicate with them. Despite not being fluent in Portuguese, I only knew a few words.
Yeah.
But I learned, how to observe, and um, I've I've become like really aware of like body language, and
Yeah.
I really like that. I think that that's an important skill in a physician, like knowing, like being able to understand your patients, um, not just through words, understanding what do they really mean, what do they really need in order for you to help them.
Yeah, of course. How did being a smaller community, how receptive were they to the groups of students that were coming through with Atlantis?
They were very nice. They're surprisingly, because I thought, like this part of Portugal don't really receive a lot of tourists.
Yeah.
It's not a touristic area. It's not like Lisbon at all. I think we were probably the only people from America there.
Yeah.
um, but they were very welcoming. I think also part of it is, like it's in their culture to be like warm and welcoming. They love, like once they hear that, like we're not from there, which is really obvious because none of us really spoke Portuguese.
Yeah.
Um, they told us about like the different foods that they have. They suggested a lot of. I really enjoyed the food there. So
Good.
and they told us about, like the different events that they hold in that small town. So that was really cool. I think they were very receptive, that they were so ready to show us, what their culture is like.
Yeah. That's awesome. So a lot of students are going to go to Atlantis's website, and I encourage you to go to Atlantis's website. And I encourage you to listen to an interview actually that I had with Lawson, who I forget his specific title, but it's on the Premed year session number 318, where I do a kind of a deep dive discussion with him about traveling abroad to shadow and pros and cons of that. A lot of students are going to go and be like, wow, this sounds really cool. And they go to the website and they see the investment of going overseas, which some people may look at it and go, that's ridiculous. Some people may look at it and go, oh, that's awesome. That's actually a lot less than I thought. You, before we hit record, you'd mentioned that you didn't really need to do any fundraising for it, but you knew some other fellows who, and fellows is the language that Atlantis uses for students who have gone through the program, right? So you knew some fellows who have done some fundraising, got some funds from school. Talk about the different ways that you've heard of people raising money, saving money, finding money to actually afford to invest in going on one of these Atlantis trips.
All right, so I know several people who relied on crowdfunding and bake sales. They made sure their bake sales were were perfectly timed. I know some fellows decided to do bake sales like around exam week because everyone's stressed out, so everyone appreciates cookies around that time. So I thought that was really great. And also I know someone who, like myself, actually like found, part-time jobs that they could work in order to cover some of the expenses. And there was also another fellow that I met who got help from the school, so they didn't have to pay for anything because the school saw the value of the shadowing experiences that Atlantis offers, and so they decided to support their students.
Wow.
Without any hesitation. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And also Atlantis has some scholarships that they offer. A lot of there are scholarships are listed on the website. I'm not aware of the deadlines right now, but the typical scholars are in undergrad, they're juniors, seniors, who are really passionate about pursuing medicine, and they have, like remarkable leadership experiences. I think there's also a GPA requirement, which I believe is 3.5. And it pretty much covers the entire fee for the Atlantis Fellowship. but then again, yeah, they Atlantis provides a guide on fundraising, which I would highly recommend that, if you're considering Atlantis, consult that. I personally just didn't have time to look at it, because I had a lot of stuff going on at work. I was in the middle of transitioning out of a role, and then also making sure that my scribe shifts were covered. So ultimately I ended up working a part-time job to help me pay for some of the expenses. And though I have no regrets, having had paid for everything out of the pocket myself, I think this experience was worth every penny, and ultimately helped strengthen my medical school application.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because a lot of students will look at Atlantis and go and ask the question, is this going to help my application? Will this be viewed in a positive light, a negative light? And I do want to preface that there is at least one medical school out there that doesn't count shadowing abroad as shadowing. So just to throw it out there, it's I think University of Utah specifically says we only want US-based shadowing. So if you're interested in only going to the University of Utah, maybe look elsewhere for shadowing. But most schools will look at shadowing as shadowing, and look at the actual experience and the global health perspective of it as well, and kind of learning a different healthcare system and see the positives of that. So for you, when it came to your application, and you're in medical school now, so you had a successful application, how do you think it helped your application when it came to just putting together this full picture of who you were? And did it ever come up on the interview trail at all about your overseas shadowing?
Yeah, so my Atlantis Fellowship in Coimbra, Portugal, I got to see specialties, like I mentioned before, like so many different specialties that I never thought I would be interested in. I got to shadow in nuclear medicine, cardiothoracic surgery, gynecology, and all of these reinforced my decision to study medicine. I was able to meet doctors from different specialties who passionately talked about, like what they were doing even as they were doing the procedures. So it was great to have seen a wide perspective of what are the many different paths that you can pursue in medicine prior to medical school. I think the biggest thing that I learned from my Atlantis Fellowship experience that I brought up during my interviews was, the universal aspect of what it's like to be an effective doctor, which is you have to be able to work collaboratively within a team and effectively communicate, which is what I saw a lot of. It was I'm really impressed with how the doctors and the medical staff, they're working together as a team, as I was shadowing there. And ultimately, as healthcare professionals, will need to be able to communicate and collaborate effectively in order to best care and advocate for our patients. And also shadowing through Atlantis, I was brought out of my comfort zone into an area where I was forced to learn and adapt to unfamiliar circumstances. I felt that experience showed a lot about me as a person, and as a future healthcare professional.
Yeah.
It helped me retrain myself to really observe and try to understand what patients were saying, even if I couldn't really understand what they were saying,
Yeah.
in their words.
That's awesome.
And
go ahead.
my my experience with Atlantis allowed me to showcase my passion for global health and commitment to becoming a culturally competent physician in my application. And I think that these are the reasons why I ended up with a well-rounded medical school application.
That's awesome. Talk to me about the cohort of students that you were with during this fellowship. Did you know anyone before you went? Are you friends with people now afterward, and you keep in contact with them? What was it like during that time there, with just as a group of students from, I think everyone's from the U.S., right? To be there and to go through this experience with them.
I had people. Everyone was from different states. I have someone from Puerto Rico. There was one from Florida. There was one from Texas, and also Louisiana. And I think upstate New York. That was okay. So we were both from New York, but
Okay.
she was from upstate New York. So I didn't really know anyone, and
Yeah.
it was great. It was great being thrown out there and being with like-minded individuals, learning with them. We we were also having some like sessions to get like collaborative group sessions in the afternoon,
Hmm.
because I there was someone in my group who was also applying for medical school, so then we were trying to talk about, you know, like our strategies, um and I do still keep in contact with them. I know some of them, most of them are actually still in undergrad, so they're
Hmm.
sophomores and juniors when they went to the fellowship. um and then some one of them ended up going to grad school, so it was great. It's great to be thrown out there with like-minded individuals who are really passionate about learning more about medicine, uh and also, you know, like learning about the culture
Yeah.
outside of the United States culture.
Yeah, it's good for us to get out and see the rest of the world, which is interesting because you are not from the States, coming to the States, so you have some of that culture as well. So that's good that going to even another country and seeing different culture and more culture is amazing. For you, having gone through it, would you do it again with no hesitation, knowing what you know now, going through the process?
Yes, totally. I it was such an amazing experience, and I definitely saw myself, you know, grow from that experience. And I would definitely do it all over again. And this is also another reason why I reached out to Atlantis, actually, to give back. My Atlantis experience inspired me to give back and just try to help out other pre-health students as well. I just recently started working with Atlantis as a student ambassador. And so, you know, students can talk to me to ask me questions about like the medical school application process, or if they have any questions about the Atlantis Fellowship, how it helped me, is it worth it, how can I fund it? I just recently started that role as well.
That's awesome. For a student who maybe is just learning about Atlantis now, and I recommend everyone go to Atlantis, joinatlantis.com is the website. For a student just learning about Atlantis, for them to really just see the benefits in the investment and going overseas and getting the experience and really seeing another culture, seeing another healthcare system, how would you recommend they first kind of learn more about Atlantis and reach out and gather more information and see if this is something they want to do?
Uh, I would definitely recommend, you know, the first step is to look at the website, look at what is available there, and and reach out to our many alumni. We have a lot of alumni, and our contact information is available on the website. I would recommend, you know, like speaking with someone or multiple people, if you would like, who went to the fellowship to see if this is going to be a right fit for you. And you know, we like as alumni, we went through the process, the application, the interview, and the actual experience. So we I think we would be the great resource um, for this, and also you could learn about, you know, like the different ways that people were able to raise money in order to fund their trip to Atlantis. Um, but also I found that, you know, like when I was still working on my application, this Atlantis staff were also very helpful. They answered all of my questions. They do have um, their contact information available on the website as well. And I think, you know, but the best resource I would say would be speaking with an alumni, so that you can hear from a student perspective how this experience really helped them as future pre-health students, professionals.
Yeah. All right. And one final question, because I know a lot of parents are going to be watching this and a lot of women like yourself. Talk about from a safety perspective, right? It's something that crosses the mind of parents sending their kids overseas, and for women and men alike, thinking about their own personal safety, going to a place where they don't know. What is it like what was it like for you and your fellows going through this process from a safety perspective and things that Atlantis puts into place to ensure the safety of all the students going to these places?
All right. So I we when you arrive to your in your location, you do have someone who we call a site manager who will be there pretty much, like all the time, making sure that you're safe. So my site manager, Carla, was amazing. She made sure that we were safe. She met us for breakfast and took each of us to the hospital, to the department herself, make sure that we don't get lost, we don't lose shadowing hours time. So I like that Atlantis has someone who's a local. So she's actually born and raised in Coimbra, Portugal, and to serve as our guide, and they're aware of like what the safety concerns are of the parents of students who are coming in to shadow at their hospitals there. So we do have site managers, and also our site manager Carla made sure that we were aware of what are the things that we are allowed to do or not do during the fellowship. She also gave us, so Atlantis also provides you with a phone so that you can easily reach out to your site manager while you're there, or to other fellows while you guys are there, so that it would be easy, to reach out to people like in case of emergency, or if you're lost, if you happen to be lost. But it was very safe. I felt very safe and secure while I was there. We were placed in a housing that was also in a nice, quiet area. Um, I I throughout my fellowship, I didn't feel unsafe at all. And I think, for the most part, it was because we had our site manager, Carla, who was there for us.
That's awesome. So how can, if a student, you mentioned you're kind of a brand ambassador now for Atlantis, how can a student potentially reach out to you? Are you on social media where they can find you and have a chat with you?
I am on the Atlantis website.
Okay.
So if you click on the alumni section there, if you can schedule a call with me, and you can also schedule a call with other alumni ambassadors who are there. If you find that maybe you can relate to some more than others, you can pick one of us.
Yeah.
And you can also reach out to Laura. She's like our manager, and she can connect with the other alumni, because we do have a list there of students who are who are alumni ambassadors, and are which schools are they coming from. So maybe you can, if you go to a certain school, you can
Oh, yeah.
find someone who had gone there, who is also from your school, and you can talk to them.
Awesome. Well, Marichelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today and really talking about your experiences. That sounds like the wonderful experience that you had with Atlantis, and why you went, and kind of why it was worth going, and obviously how it impacted your medical school application for you to have a successful application to medical school. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, I hope that was an interesting conversation with Marichelle, learning about her journey, not only for why she wants to be a physician, she loves science and wants to help people like a lot of us out there, but also her journey to Atlantis and becoming an Atlantis Fellow and now a brand ambassador for Atlantis. Again, if what we talked about was interesting for you, if you want to explore Atlantis a little bit more, go to joinatlantis.com. Check out the different fellowship opportunities that they have. Download and look at their fundraising brochure, fundraising kind of pamphlet that they have, so that if you can't afford going on an Atlantis Fellowship today, maybe next year you have those funds because of fundraising and saving, and maybe support from your school as well. Again, go to joinatlantis.com. Check out Marichelle, reach out to other brand ambassadors, other alumni from Atlantis, and ask those questions to see if Atlantis and going on a fellowship is something that is right for you. I hope this episode was helpful. It's a little bit different here on the YouTube channel to have an interview format specifically for YouTube. If you like this, leave a comment, let me know, and maybe we can do more interviews here on the YouTube channel. Again, go check out the podcast, premedyears.com/318. was an interview that I did with Lawson from Atlantis about Atlantis and shadowing abroad and the pros and cons of all of that. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time here on the YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can get some more great videos in your queue. Thank you.